Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The quote of the day is: the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. A quote by Nelson Mandela. Today, the topic of presentation is open vial policy, monitoring heat and freeze damage to vaccines under the kind supervision of Professor Dr. Saira Afzal. The learning outcomes of today's presentation is introduction to open vial policy, WHO multi-dose vial policy, WHO pre-qualified vaccines, monitoring heat exposure and vaccine vial monitor, freeze damage and shake test, recent updates, and MCQs. By the end of this presentation, participants will be able to describe what is open vial policy and what is WHO multi-dose vial policy, WHO pre-qualified vaccines, what is the procedure of monitoring heat exposure and vaccine vial monitor, freeze damage, and how to perform shake test. Now, what is open vial policy? Implementation of open vial policy allows reuse of partially used multi-dose vials of applicable vaccines in subsequent sessions, both in fixed and outreach sessions up to 4 weeks, that are 28 days, subject to meeting certain conditions and thus reduce vaccine wastage. Now, this is the WHO policy statement for multi-dose vial policy. Now, what is multi-dose vial? A multi-dose vial is a vial of liquid medication intended for parenteral administration that contains more than one dose of the medication. Multi-dose vials are labeled as such by the manufacturer and typically contain an antimicrobial preservative to help prevent the growth of bacteria. The preservative has no effect on viruses and does not protect against contamination when healthcare personnel fail to follow the safe injection practices. On the background of multi-dose vial policy, as vaccines increase in prices, wastage is a growing concern for many immunization programs. It is therefore important to ensure that countries have information on which multi-dose vials of vaccine can be kept open for extended periods of time to minimize vaccine wastage while at the same time ensuring vaccine safety. The policy statement on use of multi-dose vials issued in 2000, which this document replaces, has allowed immunization program managers to reduce wastage of vaccine doses in open vials while ensuring that the vaccines are safe for use. However, today's vaccines are different from previous vaccine products, making application of the original multi-dose vial policy more challenging. The original policy separated vaccine by type and specified that liquid vaccine could be kept open for reuse for up to 28 days, while lyophilized vaccines were to be discarded at the end of immunization session or 6 hours after opening, whichever comes first. This is an old concept. Since 2000, many new vaccines have been developed, many of which already been included in EPI. In 2014, there are more than 30 types of vaccines that are pre-qualified by WHO, comprising about 120 different products. Due to complexities of these new vaccine formulations, not all vaccines in use today fit into the simple liquid. To keep them for 28 days or categorize them into lyophilized, discard within 6 hours after their reconstitution. Such vaccines include liquid vaccines in presentations of greater than one dose that do not contain preservatives, or those that contain preservatives which do not meet the required standard of preservative efficacy. Vaccines with preservatives that do not meet these minimum standards may not be able to be kept safely for up to 28 days without triggering bacterial growth. Open vials must therefore be discarded at the end of an immunization session or within 6 hours after opening, whichever comes first. It is thus necessary to revise the multi-dose vial policy, and present policy briefs outline these changes. Now, this is the WHO multi-dose vial policy that is given in 2014. According to this, all open WHO pre-qualified multi-dose vials of vaccines should be discarded at the end of immunization session or within 6 hours of opening, whichever comes first. Whichever comes first means that if the immunization session ends first, then the vaccine vials, leftover vaccine vials should be discarded, or if the 6 hours has been passed after the vaccine vial has been opened, then it should be discarded unless the vaccine meets all of the four criteria. If the vaccine meets the four criteria, the open vial can be kept and used for up to 28 days after opening. Now, these are the 4 points. These are the four criteria for multi-dose vial policy that will be discussed in detail later. These are the vaccine is currently pre-qualified by WHO. Second is the vaccine is approved for use for up to 28 days after opening the vial. The expiry date of vaccine has not been passed. And last point is the vaccine vial has been and will continue to be stored at WHO manufacturer recommended temperatures. Now we will discuss these points one by one. First point is the vaccine currently pre-qualified by WHO. Now what is pre-qualified vaccines by WHO? In order to for a vaccine to be pre-qualified, WHO independently evaluates data on vaccine quality, safety, and efficacy. This evaluation includes examining the effectiveness of preservatives as well as the stability of vaccine under different temperature conditions. In addition, the pre-qualification program assesses such things as the quality of vials, stoppers, caps, and labels. Taken together, these allow the safety and efficacy of the vaccine to be assured, particularly after opening. If WHO does not have adequate information to determine the behavior of vaccine after the vials have been opened, the vaccine is not pre-qualified. Second is the vaccine is approved for use for up to 28 days after opening the vial as determined by the WHO. For injectable vaccine, this means that vaccine contains appropriate type and amount of preservative. Multi-dose vials of oral vaccine may not contain preservative, but nevertheless may be kept and used for up to 28 days after opening the vial unless otherwise indicated. Each WHO pre-qualified vaccine has a vaccine product page on WHO website with a specific reference that can be found by handling of open multi-dose vials. This description provides information to program managers and national immunization officials on the proper handling of multi-dose vials for each available presentation. Third point is the expiry date of the vaccine has not been passed. This condition is part of immunization best practice and is included here to emphasize the importance of not choosing the vaccine vial after the product has expired. The expiry date may be reached over the course of 28 days, so in line with good practice, the expiry dates of all open vials should be checked prior to every use. The last and fourth point is the vaccine vial has been and will continue to be stored at WHO or manufacturers recommended temperatures. All vaccines, with the exception of those approved for use in a controlled temperature chain, should be stored according to WHO or manufacturer recommended temperatures, normally between +2 to 8 degrees centigrade, and should be protected from freezing and sunlight where relevant. Prior to use, the vaccine vial monitor should be consulted to ensure that it has not reached the discard point. If it has, the efficacy of the vaccine has compromised by excessive heat exposure and vaccine should be discarded. If a vaccine vial is labeled as freeze sensitive and is suspected of having been frozen or a temperature alarm indicates exposure to sub-zero temperature, the shake test should be performed to assess if there has been damage to the product and the vaccine should be handled accordingly. Now the application to special strategies. This session describes provisions for the handling of open multi-dose vials in campaigns and outreach situations and other situations. Provided the vaccine meet the above mentioned four criteria for keeping open multi-dose vials for up to 28 days, and as long as appropriate handling procedures are followed to diminish the risk of vial contamination, open vials can be used in subsequent immunization campaigns in different sizes for up to 28 days. However, in order to implement the multi-dose vial policy safely, open vaccine vials must continue to be kept at the recommended temperatures after opening. In particular, it is important to keep open multi-dose vials that do not contain preservative, whether they are lyophilized or liquid form, cooled at temperatures between +2 to 8 degrees centigrade during immunization session or within 6 hours after opening, whichever comes first. Keeping these open vials cool will reduce the risk associated with growth from microorganisms that may have been introduced into the vial and used in a controlled temperature chain. WHO has recently defined a controlled temperature chain whereby specific vaccines are pre-qualified for use at temperature for up to 40 degrees centigrade for a limited period of time as appropriate to the stability of the antigen. For vaccines approved for use in a controlled temperature chain, specific guidance on how to maintain the correct temperature range and adhere to other predefined controlled temperature chain conditions is available from WHO. Application of the multi-dose vial policy in controlled temperature change settings may vary by vaccine. If these cases consult the product insert and WHO website on how to apply the multi-dose vaccine policy for each controlled temperature change vaccine. Now, the scientific rationale for the policy. There are both economic and operational advantages in applying the multi-dose vial policy, but there are also risks if policy is not applied correctly. First, uh, for multi-dose vial policy, we have to assure the safety and its efficacy. Its safety and efficacy can be affected by improper vaccine handling, from the transportation to the administration of the vaccine. And WHO reviews the preservative efficacy of the vaccine. Many vaccines contain preservatives. Uh, yeah, if these vaccines contain sufficient levels of preservatives that are traditional thiomersal, assess the stability of vaccine at different temperatures. For this purpose, there are vaccine vial monitors for thermal damage to the vaccine, and for freeze damage, thaw test, shake test is introduced. WHO recommends discarding all non-WHO pre-qualified vaccine products within 6 hours after opening or at the end of immunization session, in whichever comes first. Second, the time limits for keeping open multi-dose vials. All multi-dose vaccine vials should be discarded at the end of immunization session or after 6 hours of opening, whichever comes first, if it does not contain an effective preservative, that is thiomersal, and preservative efficacy have not been vigorously reviewed. Third is new vaccines and presentations, including fractional doses. The multi-dose vial policy described here can be applied to all multi-dose vials of vaccines for all WHO pre-qualified vaccines and all new vaccines that become WHO pre-qualified. Single-dose presentations but can be used as a multi-dose presentations if developed as a fraction doses. For example, rabies vaccine or influenza vaccine. For example, influenza vaccine comes in a vial for an adult dose. If the children came, one half of the vaccine can be given to two children. So if one half of the vaccine is left behind, it will be given in the next 6 hours, and if it is not consumed, then it will be discarded, as these doesn't contain any preservatives. Vaccine preservatives recommended to use thimerosal as a preservative, and there is a global ban on mercury and mercury related products after 2012. Now, how to implement the policy safely. First is use of visual triggers. WHO pre-qualified vaccine where VVM, if attached, is on the label of the vaccine. The vaccine, while once opened, can be kept for subsequent immunization session for up to 28 days, regardless of the formulation of the product, whether it is liquid or lyophilized. And WHO pre-qualified vaccines where the VVM is attached in a different location than on the label, for example, on the cap or the neck of the ampule. In this instance, the vaccine, while once opened, must be discarded at the end of immunization session or within 6 hours of opening, whichever comes first. This is regardless of the formulation of product, whether it is liquid or lyophilized, and would apply, for example, to a reconstituted product of which the vaccine vial cap, which has a VVM attached, has been discarded after opening. These are the examples of the vaccine vial monitors. In this first bottle vial, the VVM is with the label, and in the second one, the VVM is on the cap, and on the third one, the VVM is also on the cap. So when these vials are opened, where the VVM is on the caps or on the neck, as these are will be removed after opening, so these vaccine vials will be discarded after the 6 hours. Now check WHO pre-qualification website. The range of vaccines pre-qualified by WHO regularly expands and changes. As a result, WHO routinely updates the individual vaccine product sheets available on WHO pre-qualification website. To ensure that a specific vaccine is approved for use for up to 28 days after opening the vial, these individual vaccine product sheets on the website should be consulted, referencing the description handling of opened multi-dose vials. No good immunization practice, which includes appropriate storage and transport conditions, appropriately preserved, which include the adequate amount of the preservative that thermosol in the vaccine vials, and appropriate use conditions and training of the staff handling the vaccines. And this is the expanded program on immunization for multi-dose open vial policy for WHO pre-qualified vaccines. Those the vaccine that can be used for 28 days after opening includes are DPT, TT, tetanus toxoid, hepatitis B, oral polio vaccine, a liquid pentavalent form, uh, and injectable polio vaccines. And those vaccines which are not recommended for use for up to 28 days after opening and should be discarded after 6 hours include BCG, measles, and pneumococcal uh, vaccines. These should be discarded after 6 hours after opening. Now, these guidelines are published in National EPA Policy and Strategic Guidelines, Pakistan, 2015 for multi-dose for the use of multi-dose vials. In this, it is stated that vaccine vials open in subsequent immunization session. A partial use multi-dose vial with the preservative can be used in the next immunization session if all of the following as described above, the four criteria are met. And to avoid any adverse event, multi-dose vaccine while without preservatives such as pneumococcal vaccine must be discarded no later than 6 hours after opening or at the end of the session, whichever comes first. A partially used tetanus toxoid vial in outreach session should not be reused later because of the risk of contamination. However, at a static EPA centers such as cold chain centers, a partially used tetanus toxoid vial can be used on next day if safely conditions are met as mentioned earlier. Same practice is applicable for multi-dose vials of hepatitis V for that are for birth doses. And for oral polio vaccine, multi-dose vial policy shall be applicable for all partially used vials, both at static and outreach vaccination centers, provided safety conditions are met and vial is properly capped. Now, there are another guidelines in Pakistan and that are published in Vaccine Logistic Manuals for Expanded Program of Immunization that is also published in 2015. The guidelines for open vial policy published in this guideline is in EPI program of Pakistan, vials with more than one doses are used for BCG, oral polio vaccine, PCV, measles, and tetanus toxoid. WHO recommended global policy on the use of open vial vaccine is as follows. Open vials of OPV and TT vaccines may be used in subsequent immunization sessions until a new shipment of vaccine arrives, provided that each of the following conditions are met that are previously described, that expiry date has not been passed, appropriate temperature conditions have been maintained, and there is no contamination. Open vials of vaccines which have not taken out of the health facility for immunization activities, for example, outreach teams and national immunization drives, are discarded at the end of the day. Open vials of PCV10, measles, and BCG vaccine must be discarded within 6 hours. An open vial must be discarded immediately if any of the following conditions apply. If sterile procedures have not been fully observed, or if there is even a suspicion that the open vial has been contaminated, or if there is visible evidence of contamination such as change in appearance, floating particles, etc. Store the partially used OPV and TT vials in a separate box inside the ice-lined refrigerator, keeping them upright. Use the partially used vial first on the next session irrespective of the vaccination team. No, these are the actions that should be taken for open vial policy. Use before the expiry date. First of all, and then vial, write on the vial the date and hour it is opened, and store and transport between the +2 to 8 degrees centigrade. Maintain good hygiene and vaccine handling practices. Read the instructions and recommendations of the provider and the national guidelines. The cautions that need to be taken are: do not use if the vial stopper has been submerged in water from the leaking cold packs. A VVM has not reached the discard point. Do not leave needle in the vaccine vial stopper, and do not refill syringes with the vaccination. And the recommendations are: during the weekend or in a preparation for electricity outages, emergency, or another event that could affect the cold chain storage, you should adequately prepare cold packs that put them in thermos. Pack and store the vaccines in a thermos. Put a thermometer in a thermos. Place the thermos in a refrigerator. Now, after the immunization session, Uh, what is the policy for the multi-dose vial policy? At the end of the session, all open vials should be returned to the chain center. At cold chain center, points open vials should be segregated into reusable pentavalent TT hepatitis B vials fulfilling the above mentioned criteria and non-reusable vials of measles and BCG. All open vials of measles and BCG should be destroyed after 6 hours of opening or at the end of session, whichever comes first. In case of any adverse effects following immunization, all open vials, whether reusable or not, should not be destroyed. They should be kept in a proper cold chain until investigation is over. All open vials should be recorded in a stock register. Well-sealed ice pick should be used in vaccine carriers so that the leak water does not cause any contamination. Now, the another part of the presentation is monitoring heat exposure using vaccine vial monitors. Now, what is a vaccine vial monitor? The abbreviated form is VVM. The VVM is a type of a monitor device applied directly to each vaccine vial by the manufacturer. It enables the health worker to verify at the time of use whether vaccine is in usable condition and has not lost its potency and efficacy due to temperature exposure. The VVM progressively changes color with heat exposure and gives a visual indication when exposure has occurred. The vaccine itself, of course, exhibits no visible change with heat exposure. Note that VVMs are not suitable for CCMs. They are an additional device to use in conjugation with other monitors. CCM means the cold chain monitors. These are the other procedure for the monitoring of the cold chains. The benefits of using VVMs include it gives confidence for the UE use open vials of vaccines. It has a potential for large decrease in vaccine wastage, gives the health worker a positive indication that he is administering a potent vaccine. Now, how this VVM works? The VVM has a great sensitive scale in a circular disc that registers a gradual and progressive color change with exposure to heat. The inner scare is initially white but becomes darker with exposure to heat. All the time the inner scare is lighter than the surrounding disc, the vaccine is safe to use. If the inner scare becomes or equal uh, color or darker than the surrounding disc, the vaccine must not be used. This is the active surface and as this is the scare, if it is lighter than the outer circular color, then it is good VVM or the vaccine can be used. But if this color changes to the same color as it is in the circle, then the vaccine is not for use as indicated in the third vial. And if it gets more darker than the circular outer circle color, then it is also not for use. Know how to read the VVM. The only important point is the color of the inner square related to the outer circle. If the inner square is lighter than the outer circle, the vaccine may be used. If the inner square is the same color or darker than the outer circle, the vaccine must not be used. Now the types of VVM. Some vaccines are more sensitive to heat than others. For this reason, there are currently four different types of VVM designed to match the vaccine with differing heat stability. For example, VVM2 is used with OPV because this is most heat sensitive vaccine. This VVM reaches its discard point after only 2 days at 30-70 degrees centigrade, while for hepatitis B vaccine, it is very heat stable, and the VVM30 is for this hepatitis B. VVM30 is used. It takes 30 days to reach its discard point at 37 degrees centigrade, and this is the table which shows the time and the temperature ranges when the vaccines will be destroyed with the relevant VVM numbers. Now this is another picture of vaccine vial monitor. The lighter color can be used for the vaccination, while if the color becomes as same of the circle or it gets darker, then it should not be used. No freeze damage to vaccine. The vaccine that are freeze sensitive will get spoiled if they get frozen. The causes of vaccine freezing are improper storage in Iceland refrigerator, cold climates, and if ambient temperature is less than 0 degrees centigrade, storage and transport and with non-condition frozen ice pack, defective ILR, incorrect thermostat adjustment, untrained and improperly trained staff. No freeze watch indicator. The freeze watch indicator is an irreversible temperature indicator which shows if vaccines have been exposed to temperatures below 0 degrees centigrade. It consists of white backing card with a small vial of a red liquid, all contained in a plastic casting. If the indicator is exposed to temperatures below 0 degrees centigrade for more than 1 hour, the vial will burst and release the red liquid. The indicator is used to monitor the storage conditions of DPT, tetanus toxoid, hepatitis B, and pentavalent vaccines that lose their potency if frozen. Know the vaccine shake test. Now, what is the vaccine shake test? Shake test is used for determining if an adsorbed vaccine has been frozen anytime in the past. The test is valid for adsorbable vaccines only such as DPT, DT, TT, pentavalent vaccine, and hepatitis B. Know how to perform the shake test. For this purpose, take the suspected freeze damaged vial and then take another vial of the same vaccine from the same batch and the same manufacturer and the label it is as control. And deliberately freeze the control and then thaw it at room temperature. Shake both the vials vigorously. Place both of them on a flat surface side by side against a source of light. Observe and compare the sedimentation rate in both the bottles. If the test vial sediments lower than the frozen vial, then use the vaccine. Then the test vial can be used. If the sedimentation is similar in both the vials or the test vial sediments faster than the frozen vial, then vaccine is damaged and it should be discarded. It is of no more use. And the controlled vial should also be discarded after the test performance as has been damaged during freezing. Now this is the how test is performed. In figure 1, both the vials are vigorously shaken and kept side by side at the starting point. This is the control vial that is deliberately frozen and thawed, and this is the test vial which is the suspect that it has been damaged due to excessive low temperature. And in figure 2, this is the first test vial uh, in which the sediments settle at the same rate at the control vial, so it should be discarded. In the second test vial, sedimentation is slower than the control vial, so it can be used. These are the three vaccine vials, which has the first one is for the frozen test vial, second is the frozen control vial, and third is the non-frozen test vial. This is another shake test diagram, and now the recent updates. There is an article with title is maximizing number of doses drawn from multi-dose COVID-19 vaccine by minimizing dead volume, that is published in 2021. On 21 December 2020, the highly effective Pfizer biotech COVID-19 vaccine was authorized in Europe, bringing big hopes for overcoming the pandemic. However, there are concerns about delayed availability of sufficient vaccine doses, forcing to prioritize target populations. Vaccine with Pfizer biotech COVID-19 vaccine consists of two doses of 0.3 ml each, administered intramuscularly 3 weeks apart. Each vial contains 2 to 2 ml theoretically and 2 to 2.27 ml actual volume after dilution. Meet the requirements of the European Pharmacopoeia, allowing to obtain 5 doses using a syringe of a capacity not exceeding 3 times the volume to be measured and fitted with a 21 gauge needle not less than 2.5 centimeter in length. European Medicines Agency announced that 6 doses could be extracted from a single vial using low dead volume syringes. Here we report the dead volume of different syringe needle combinations in order to inform such debate by relevant medical devices data. Firstly, we found that same syringe on different needles did not give the same dead volume, highlighting the importance of dead volume at the needle hub. Secondly, tuberculin syringes do not all withdraw the same volume at the 0.3 ml graduation, some withdrawing up to 0.32 ml. Consequently, an unnecessary volume may be withdrawn in addition to dead volume of the syringe needle combination, comprising the chances of extracting a 6 dose from vial. Lastly, we showed that the needle crimped onto a syringe offer the lowest dead volume. Crimped means that the needle is cut at some point. Now the turn for the MCQs. First MCQ is A vaccinator from a BHU XYZ was taking the pentavalent vaccine from ILR for use in routine EPA program. He noticed that VVM of batch A is getting darker but not reach the discard point, and their expiry date is much longer than the batch B, whose VVM is good but their expiry date is left only a few weeks. Which batch of vaccine should be he has to consume first to avoid vaccine damage? Whether uh, first batch A and then batch B, then second option is first batch B then batch A. Option C is both the batches should be consumed together. And last option is discard all the vials of batch A and use the batch B vaccines. Which option is correct? Option A is correct.
D.
No, option A is correct. As the VVM of batch A vaccine is getting darker, so there is the risk that the this batch vaccines will be damaged. So uh, they should be consumed first. Second MCQ is a vaccinator from a BHU XYZ keeps hepatitis B vaccine vials in a domestic refrigerator at different ranks as the ILR of the cold chain center is out of order. He suspects that some vials has been damaged as he noticed some ice in them. He took out one control vial and one test vial and performed shake test on them and check vaccine damage. How will you interpret this test? Test options are: first option is test vial can be used if its sediments settles more slowly. Second option is test valve can be used if its sediments settles more faster. Third option is test valve can be used if sediments of both vials settles at the same rate. Last option is test valve will be discarded if the sediment settles faster and control vial can be used after the test.
A.
Yes, A is the correct option. If yeah, someone suspect that vaccine is damaged due to freezing, and then he has to perform the shake test and if the sediments settles more slowly than the control well, then it is reused, then it can be used. Third MCQ is a vaccinator from a BHU XYZ keep IPV vaccine vials in his domestic refrigerator at different ranks as the ILR of the cold chain center is out of order. He suspects that some IPV vials has been damaged due to extreme low temperature. He took out one control vial and one test vial and performed shake test on them to check vaccine damage. How will you interpret this test? Options are test vial can be used if sediment settles more slowly. Second option is test vial can be used if its sediment settles more faster. Third option is he has to check the VVM if they are good, use them. Last option is shake test is not applicable for IPV vaccine. Which option is correct? Last option, option D is correct as shake test is not applicable for IPV. It is only for the TT, pentavalent and hepatitis B vaccines as they contain the aluminum hydroxide adjunctant. Fourth MCQ is there is extreme load shedding in some cold chain center where OP vaccine is stored in ILR for many days and there is complete electricity cut off from 3 days. The inner scarce color of VVM of OP vaccine has become the same as that of the outer. Know how these vials should be handled, whether they should be discarded or discard them if only the shake test fails, or shift these vials to other nearby ILR available or consume them as early as possible. Oh, this should be
A.
handled. Yes, if the VVM of the vial has reached to the outer circular color, then these vaccine vials should be discarded. Fifth MCQ is in an EPI center XYZ, measles vaccine administered on every Wednesday. The LHV appointed there opened one vial of measles vaccine containing 10 doses at 7 a.m. Every time after vaccinating the child, she immediately put back the vial in ILR. At closing time of 2 p.m., still 3 doses of vaccines are left in the vial and VVM is intact too.